Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be looking at the Vile Husk Tusk Sword. The Vile Husk Tusk Sword is a sword that's based around poison damage, and oftentimes when you come across a sword that's based around poison damage, or a weapon, or anything that's based around poison damage, they tend to be really poorly made. Unfortunately, poison damage got nerfed a while back, and all of the items that were balanced around that poison damage also got nerfed in the process. The Vile Husk is probably one of the few that managed to survive the nerfing and still managed to become a relatively useful sword, and it's mainly due to the fact that it has a pretty massive amount of amplified damage procage, which is definitely very nice. So let's go over the sword together, and we'll talk about the features of the sword, and then we'll upgrade it as well. So we've got the Vile Husk Tusk Sword, which is 30 to 111 one-handed damage. It's 57 to 174 two-handed damage, which is not bad for level 44. Has 71 dexterity requirement and 104 strength, which is not too bad for a character who would probably end up using this. It's a fast attack speed class sword, and this particular base, the Tusk Sword, I believe is a negative, I think it's a negative 10. I could be wrong on that. Let me just double check. It's a 0. It's a 0 attack speed sword. So it doesn't have any positive attack speed, doesn't have any negative attack speed either. And the unfortunate side effect of that also is that this particular sword doesn't have any increased attack speed on it. So if you want to make it faster, you're probably going to have to socket it, put a shale rune in it, or something of that nature. We also have a very nice effect of 6% chance to cast level 1 Amplify damage on striking. Now, Amplify damage is definitely a very, very nice thing. Amplify damage reduces the resistance, the physical resistance of a monster by 100%, which means that the monster ends up being very, very weak to physical damage. And having a sword that can proc it means that you could put this potentially on an Act 5 Barbarian, two-handed mercenary. You could put this on your Barbarian. It does not, unfortunately, does not work with Whirlwind, so you can't proc it with Whirlwind, but if you are like a Frenzy Barbarian or something like that, you would want extra Amplify damage proc, you could potentially use it in an offhand. It can be useful on any character that really needs a lot of amplify damage procs. Now, 6% isn't like the greatest percent chance, unfortunately, and level 1 it doesn't last very long. So you may find that it's not as good as it seems, because if it's not in the hands of somebody that attacks very quickly, it's not going to proc very often, and it's not going to be as useful. So you definitely want to speed up the weapon in any way, shape, or form to make the hits more often, so that the percent chance of amplify damage can go off more. And for that reason, let's go over to amplified damage, and let's take a look and see what level 1 does. So level 1 is a radius of 2 yards, which is very small, which means it's only going to hit really that monster and a monster that's standing directly next to the monster, and it lasts for 8 seconds in normal difficulty. In Nightmare difficulty, that's going to get cut in half, I believe, to 4, and in Hell difficulty, that gets cut down even further to, I think it's about like 2 seconds or 2.5 seconds or something like that. It's not very much. So level 1 amplify damage, not as good as it seems, although when it does proc, it's definitely going to increase your damage. Amplify damage also has the ability to break physical immunity, which is definitely very nice, but it is penalized when breaking immunes to 25% effectiveness. So keep that in mind, or 20% effectiveness, so keep that in mind. We also have a 200% enhanced damage on here, which does have a pretty big variable of 50%, so it rolls from 150 to 200%. And then we have a pretty massive undead damage bonus on here, so we've got 7 to 742% undead damage based on character level for a 7.5 per character level. So at level 44, it's obviously going to be less than 742%, and this is off-weapon ED, so you have to calculate it as such. It also has a pretty massive attack rating based on the character level to Undead, which is 10 per level. So it'll be 440 attack rating at level 44 when you put this on. We also have 250 poison damage over 6 seconds, which can be useful to help keep monsters from regenerating. As I've talked about many times before, Poison damage will stop the monster's regeneration as long as the monster turns green. That's the best way to look at it. The more complicated answer is that as soon as the monster is no longer green, they can't regenerate. Or they can regenerate, sorry. There's 25 frames, and in those 25 frames, they can regenerate in every single frame. If poison damage consumes all frames, then the monster will not regenerate, because at that point they turn green. However, when poison damage is not consuming all 25 frames, they can in fact regenerate and they will not be green. You will notice that when you use poison damage, a lot of the times you will hit a monster with poison damage and they'll only stay green for about a second. That means that they were not regenerating for that 1 second, and then as soon as that 1 second was over, now they can regenerate again because now they're no longer green. Also, you have to keep into account that most monsters in Nightmare and Hell difficulty have resistances and reduction in the duration of poison, which makes that 250 not really so great. It's probably going to be more like half that or even 33% of that in Hell difficulty. Not very effective at all. Although it can help you prevent some regeneration here or there. And then we also have a massive 50% poison resistance on here, which most people don't really care about all that much, but could be useful to a mercenary, specifically to keep them alive. We also have the Ethereal version here, which is 45 to 165 damage, 84 to 261 two-handed, 61 dex, and 94 strength. Now, of course, you can upgrade this, and if you were going to use this on an Act 2 Barbarian Mercenary, especially the Ethereal version, you probably would want to upgrade it and probably put a Shale Rune in it if you were trying to get that amp damage proc. But you're going to need some pretty hefty runes of a Pull Rune and a Lum Rune to upgrade this. And it's going to go from 30 to 111 damage, one-handed, 57 to 174, two-handed, 71 dex, 104 strength, level 44, to the Balrog Blade, 45 to 225 one-handed, 165 to 354 two-handed. It's actually not bad. 87 dexterity, 185 strength requirement, and level 60. The requirements are a bit high for level 60, and you might have trouble actually putting that on at level 60, so keep that in mind. The Ethereal version can also be upgraded, and it's going to upgrade from 45 to 165 one-handed damage, 84 to 261 two-handed damage, 61 dex, 94 strength, and level 44, to 66 to 336 one-handed damage, 246 to 531 two-handed, which is pretty darn sweet, 77 dex requirement, 175 strength, and level 60. A very nice upgrade there on the Ethereal version, in my opinion, and could definitely be extremely useful on an Act 5 Barbarian Mercenary. You could also Zod this, but I'm not really sure if it's worth the Zod rune. But having a Barbarian Mercenary who could spam Amplify damage for you could certainly be useful. I would definitely put a Shale Rune in it, though, to speed it up, because if you're going to use this for the amp damage proc, you want him to hit a lot, as fast as possible, and you want to make sure that his hits are connecting as well. So this sword could also be really useful in Chaos Sanctuary, where there's tons of undead, or like Act 2, where there's tons of undead. That undead damage on there is actually pretty substantial and is probably going to make him hit pretty hard, especially in combination with the Amplify damage and the pretty nice damage that it has already. All of it comes together to make a pretty interesting weapon. Let's take a look over at Silo's Pen real quick, and let's see where we could potentially find this weapon if we wanted to get our hands on it, shall we? Ink. Alright, so here we are over on Silo's Pen, and let's take a look at the Vile Husk. There it is. And since this is a relatively mid-range item at level 44, let's do around 200% Magic Find. That seems about fair. We're going to check bosses first. And we really need this to drop in Nightmare difficulty since it's level 44. That's the beginning of Nightmare, and the closer to the beginning of Nightmare we can get, the better. So as it is right now, it looks like Mephisto at 1 in 719 is our best bet, with Diablo at 1 in 751 being a second. Not really good choices for a character who's just starting out Nightmare difficulty who wants to get their hands on this. But if you were a higher level character just trying to farm it, it does look like Nightmare Diablo is your best bet. And super uniques, bink bink. We've got Hell Cow King, not really a good choice for an on-level character, but a decent one for a Nightmare level, a high level character trying to farm it. Not really a lot of good choices here for a low-level character. Stormtree and Lower Kurost, that's actually not bad. That's the lowest level one we've seen so far. 1 in 8,485 with a monster with a static position. So if you've never farmed Stormtree before, he's always at the entrance to Lower Kurost. So you basically just take the Lower Kurost waypoint and you basically go straight down toward the entrance to Lower Kurost, and you will find him there every single time guarding the entrance. Not a lot of really good choices. Most of these are either in hell difficulty or they're way too high of a level for a lower level character to farm. In fact, let me just limit this real quick to Nightmare, just so I can get a better idea of what we're looking at. I mean, so far, Stormtree definitely seems like the best option for a low-level character trying to get this. And I'm not seeing anything better. So it does seem like if you're a low-level character trying to get your hands on this, Stormtree is definitely your best bet. If you are a higher-level character trying to get your hands on this, at that point, the best super unique is definitely the Cow King in Hell difficulty. Not really a lot of other good choices. Everything just kind of balloons out from there. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos. Even when we were talking about the vilest of swords, the Vile Husk. And as always, keep watching.